Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take the densest, most interconnected sources and really drill down to the critical core so you can quickly grasp the massive implications.
Today, we're looking at something special. We're not just analyzing a film franchise. We are opening a set of source materials that argues The Matrix is less about science fiction and maybe a lot more like a hidden blueprint.
A blueprint for our future.
Our imminent evolutionary future, yeah.
That's right. Our mission today, it starts with a really surprising observation from The Matrix Resurrections. The whole philosophy, it just shifts. It moves from Neo, the one, the single messianic agent,
right,
to the power of the two, Neo and Trinity together. The power literally moved to the connection between them. And everywhere you looked, there was that unsettling but beautiful visual of startling murmurations.
And the sources we're digging into, they posit that the entire franchise, but especially Resurrections, is a carefully designed roadmap. It maps humanity's trajectory toward becoming a collective consciousness.
Moving from that isolated ego.
It's exactly from the isolated ego to a unified planetary organism. And this is the critical part. This transition is reaching its final evolutionary threshold. And potentially around the year 2045.
Which lines up perfectly with the predictions for the singularity.
Perfectly.
So we are not holding back. This deep dive is going to synthesize evolutionary biology, the philosophy of conflict, Hegel, and ancient esoteric science. We're talking Rudolf Steiner and the law of one.
And we're connecting all of that to what's happening right now. Modern AI acceleration, the current UAP disclosure events.
It's the grand unified theory of everything. And we're going to use the matrix as our central decryption key.
It's the synthesis of the esoteric and the technological. And it shows how the chaos we're all experiencing right now might just be a necessary precursor to a planetary birth. Let's unpack this blueprint, starting with that really profound shift in Matrix 4, the death of the individual hero.
Okay, let's really get into this. It's a huge philosophical and narrative shift. For anyone listening who hasn't seen Resurrections or maybe just missed the subtlety of it, the original trilogy was all about Neo.
All about Neo.
It was about him achieving peak individual agency. He was the Messiah, the one singular anomaly who could defy the rules of the system.
And this is exactly what the new film just completely subverts. The sources, they really highlight that in the world of Resurrections, individual power, even Neo's power, it's not just insufficient. Until he reconnects with Trinity, it's basically neutralized.
The system evolved.
The system has evolved way past needing individual agents to maintain control. It's a different game now.
So how does the system enforce control now then? What's the new mechanism?
It does it by leveraging collective fear and digital pressure. In the first three movies, The Matrix was policed by these highly individualized, very powerful programs.
The agents, always singular, always in the suit.
Always. But in Resurrections, the main mechanism of control is what they call swarm mode, or less formally, just bots.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting for our modern world, because the analyst, who's the new controller.
The new architect, essentially.
Right. He doesn't need super users like Agent Smith to fight Neo anymore. He can activate any ordinary blue pill civilian at any moment and turn them into a mindless, destructive weapon.
That's the anyone factor. And it's such a brilliant piece of commentary on modern life. The movie is suggesting that in our hyper-connected digital age, just think about how quickly a consensus forms on social media, or how fast a moral panic can spread.
Oh yeah, instantly.
Instantly. Individual agency is just so easily overridden by that collective pressure, or by algorithmic design, or just by the system's intent. The new form of control isn't coercion from the outside. It's harmonization from within.
So the system leverages the fear of being isolated, the fear of being left out of the herd mentality, and that ensures everyone just keeps moving in sync.
The analyst doesn't need to force you. He just needs to make sure that the 100 people standing around you are all moving toward the same goal. And suddenly you're trapped right in the middle of it.
You're swept up in the current.
Exactly. And to really reinforce this control, identity itself is, it's degraded. It's turned into something fluid and easily managed by the system. The sources really detail how identity is presented as a digital construct in the film. They call it the digital self-image, or DSI.
Can you elaborate on that, the DSI? Because this idea feels incredibly crucial, especially with how we all present ourselves online today.
It really is. The DSI is, it's essentially a digital mask. It's an outward-facing persona that the system uses to compartmentalize and really to neutralize the individual ego. The sources point to these fascinating, super subtle visual cues.
Like in the mirror.
Exactly. When Thomas Anderson looks into mirrors, which, are traditionally these windows to the soul, he often doesn't see Keanu Reeves. He sees this older, more generic, balding man named Stephen Roy. That's his DSI.
I remember that moment. It was so jarring. You just don't expect it.
It was meant to be jarring. The implication is that the Keanu Reeves look that we associate with Neo, that's just his residual self-image, his RSI. It's his core memory of who he is.
But not what the system sees.
Not what the system lets others see. To the rest of the Matrix, to the collective, he's just this generic aging coder. The system controls how the collective perceives him, which makes his personal identity easy to suppress. It becomes fluid.
So the system doesn't even have to fight Neo directly. It just needs to make sure everyone else perceives him as powerless. And in that sense, he is powerless. That is a powerful critique.
It is. The system doesn't need to clone you or destroy you anymore. It just needs to control your digital footprint and your outward-facing persona.
And that lack of individual anchors, this fluid identity, it leads us right into the biological analogy that frames the entire film, the murmuration.
Which is such a striking visual, and it's repeated throughout the movie. Those massive flocks of starlings moving like a single, coordinated dark cloud.
Why starlings specifically? What's the science behind that?
The sources use the starling murmuration to represent emergent behavior. This is a central concept in complexity theory, and it's key. A starling murmuration has no single leader. That is the most important part.
No one's in charge.
No one. The scientific finding is that every single bird reacts only to its 7 closest neighbors. It follows a few simple rules, and this instantaneous localized interaction creates a massive, fluid, and incredibly complex shape that behaves just like a single organism.
So the coordination, it just arises spontaneously from the bottom up. There's no centralized command.
Precisely. It's a collective consciousness where the whole is, geometrically greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
It demonstrates this perfect unity in movement, but it all starts with simple local interaction.
And the analyst, the villain, he uses this exact principle to represent his controlled system, right? He's basically taken a model of natural emergent unity and corrupted it.
He's corrupted it for top-down control. Yes, the birds in his vision are moving perfectly. But the analyst admits that he maintains that synchronization, the whole system, through 2 very simple emotional loops.
Fear and desire.
Fear and desire. It's the ultimate control mechanism, and it's masquerading as natural unity. He allows just enough chaos to make the people inside feel free, but he keeps them tethered by these base emotions. He's managing the collective, but it's a subtractive consciousness. It takes away from the individual.
Which makes perfect sense, because if that connection model, the murmuration, is the analyst system, then the true anomaly must be the one that breaks that collective control.
And that brings us right back to Neo and Trinity.
Right. This is the biggest subversion of the entire franchise mythology. The new definition of the one is unity, not solitude.
Neo only regains his full reality warping power when he is in physical and mental proximity to Trinity. The sources argue very clearly that the anomaly is no longer Neo's singular code. The anomaly is the connection itself.
It's the we philosophy completely replacing the me messiah complex of the first films.
The power resides in the relationship. This is the crucial, what you might call multicellular leap. It's the shift from a solitary spiritual awakening, which is what the original film showed us, to a collaborative, system-changing architecture. It's the shift from the one to oneness, and that's only achieved through relational synergy.
So if the original Matrix was the story of the isolated ego trying to break free from the system, Resurrections is the story of that ego finding its necessary partner, its other half, to form a higher state of being.
And that concept of necessary friction, of partnership, that brings us right into the philosophical scaffolding that underlies the entire war between man and machine. We're talking about the Hegelian dialectic.
This is where we have to step back and see the Matrix not just as a cool simulation, but as an unfolding philosophical argument. The dialectic, for anyone who needs a refresher, it suggests that conflict isn't just random violence.
Not at all.
It's the fundamental engine. It's what drives consciousness and evolution forward through 3 stages: thesis, antithesis, and synthesis.
Exactly. And the source material maps the Matrix narrative perfectly onto this framework. It's almost a one-to-one correlation.
So let's start with the thesis. That would have to be humanity trapped in the pods, the isolated ego. We're defined by our individual biological isolation, our separation, and our capacity for just unmanaged emotional chaos. We're trapped in our individual dreams or our nightmares.
The antithesis then must be the force that generates the maximum possible friction with that thesis. And that is, of course, the machine world. This is the realm of cold, absolute structure, of pure logic, and the total lack of self. It's represented perfectly by the architect in the original trilogy.
The ultimate opposite.
The machines provided the necessary friction to force the thesis humanity, to react, to organize, and to struggle for a freedom that preserved the self.
And the synthesis, which we finally start to see realized in Resurrections, is the city of Io. It's not just human, not just machine. It's a collaborative ecosystem where the best of both worlds are kept.
Human creativity and passion.
United with machine efficiency and logic. And the limitations, like the brutality of the machines and the chaos of early humanity, they're discarded.
And the sources suggest an even deeper reading of the conflicts in the lore. The machine civil war, which is mentioned, it wasn't just a physical fight over resources. It was more like an internal conflict, maybe a psychological break within a singular, massive machine consciousness, the Deus ex machina.
So the different machine factions we see, the architect, the oracle, the analyst, they're all just different competing lobes of the same planetary machine brain.
That's the theory. They represent different strategies for managing the human variable. You have logic with the architect, compassion and intuition with the oracle, and pure emotional control with the analyst. The whole system feels like one massive, dreaming, almost schizophrenic entity trying to integrate itself.
It's trying to solve its own existential problem.
Yes. How to create stable unity.
That reframes the entire saga. It stops being about two separate species fighting each other and becomes the story of the internal maturation of a single, complex system. And this idea of evolving complexity, it maps perfectly onto the biological ladder that you mentioned earlier. We have to go deeper into that analogy.
Absolutely. We can map the matrix entities onto a progression towards what's called holism or superorganism status. This helps us visualize the kind of spiritual maturity that's required for that 2045 leap.
So let's start at the bottom of the ladder. The analyst and his swarm mode. What kind of life form does that represent?
They represent prokaryotic logic. Think of bacteria, or a really simple subtractive collective. Prokaryotes are simple, interchangeable cells that lack a nucleus. They lack a centralized, individualized command center. They just act based on simple, immediate chemical signaling.
And how does that map to the matrix?
The bots, the swarm of blue pills, they're simple, interchangeable parts that have lost their internal complexity, their agency. Their purpose is purely functional efficiency for the collective, which makes it a subtractive collective. It subtracts individuality for the sake of the swarm.
It's the Borg, or a hive mind.
It's the Borg hive mind, a system that's too simple to evolve further on its own. It's a dead end.
Okay, so then the red pills and the Zionites, the humans who achieved self-awareness and left the simulation, what are they?
They are the eukaryotic logic. Eukaryotes are complex cells with a centralized nucleus. This means they have an individualized, complex, internal world and their own internal operating system. They're self-aware, they're specialized, and they're highly resilient. They achieved individual sovereignty, but
They still exist as separate, sometimes competing units, the ultimate individualists. But they can't break the matrix alone.
no, they can't. And that requires the next step up the ladder, the multicellular step. This is Neo and Trinity. They're the first tissue. In biology, a multicellular organism is defined by the synergistic cooperation between specialized cells.
And their power is explicitly synergistic.
Explicitly, it comes only from the link between the two units. They are the human-machine holobiont, a symbiotic unit that's ready to form something larger.
And the city of Io, where humans and machines, the sentients, work together?
That is the biofilm stage. It's a complex colony of various cells and different organisms, all cooperating for survival. It demonstrates that the power of the individual, that eukaryotic logic, it must be preserved, but it has to be directed toward a shared synergistic goal. That's multicellular unity.
So what's the superorganism goal? What's at the top of this biological ladder?
The vision of the new matrix,
Yeah.
the one that Neo and Trinity promised they would rebuild. This is a collective consciousness that preserves the individual cell while acting with instantaneous harmony. And this extends to the cosmic scale, referencing Isaac Asimov's concept of galaxia.
Right. For listeners who might not have encountered that concept, Asimov's Gaia was a planetary organism where every particle, every plant, every person was integrated into a single, unified consciousness.
And galaxia is the galactic organism, a superorganism made up of multiple Gaia-level planetary systems. The matrix itself, in this context, is the digital noosphere.
A term from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
Right. A collective layer of thought wrapped around the Earth. It's the necessary technological scaffolding for the ultimate planetary brain.
That radically changes the interpretation. The Matrix wasn't just a cage, it was a digital incubator, a complex layer of thought necessary to force the isolated egos to become a cohesive planetary consciousness, ready for that multicellular leap.
And that transition, the moment the incubator switches off and the organism is born, that is precisely what the sources suggest is approaching. And it brings us right to the deadline, 2045.
If the Matrix saga is a metaphor for planetary incubation, then we have to introduce this highly speculative but really compelling theory that's presented in these sources, that Earth is currently under a necessary developmental quarantine.
The planetary quarantine hypothesis is absolutely key to understanding the singularity deadline. Our current state, characterized by isolated national egos, internal resource wars, profound spiritual separation, it makes us too volatile to integrate into a galactic organism.
You'd be a cancer on the system.
We would be a cancer.
Wow.
Galactic society, according to these sources, operates as an advanced social memory complex that's focused on service to others, or STO.
So the quarantine, the trap of our local reality, including what they call the veil of forgetfulness, it isn't a punishment.
Not at all. It's viewed as an act of evolutionary preservation. We are kept isolated until our planetary organism is mature enough to breathe on its own without destroying others, or more importantly, itself.
And this framework dramatically reframes the technological singularity that Ray Kurzweil predicted for around 2045. It stops being just a computer breakthrough and it becomes a planetary birth.
The sources describe the rapid technological acceleration we're seeing today, the exponential growth of AI, the global internet infrastructure, as an embryonic growth spurt. We are rapidly, and I mean rapidly, constructing the planetary nervous system, the necessary wiring for the noosphere to fully integrate.
And 2045 is presented as the culmination of all of this.
2045 is the projected birth date. And the chaos of today, the political friction, the information wars, the social media toxicity, all of that is seen merely as the inevitable labor pains required to push the planet into the next density.
Okay, but that sounds like a very convenient explanation for the current chaos, that it's all just labor pains. Doesn't that risk ignoring the very real free will and the destruction involved in all this?
That's a profound point. The sources don't dismiss the free will or the suffering at all. Instead, they argue that the intensity of the chaos is the indicator of how close we are to the threshold. The more we struggle, the closer we are to the synthesis.
So the pressure is the point.
The quarantine is designed to force the choice between service to others and service to self under extreme pressure. The goal is not a pain-free birth, it's an authentic one.
Okay, but let's look at the tech for a second. Why would our technology matter to a galaxy that's full of supposedly hyper-advanced civilizations? Wouldn't they already have better AI, better everything?
They absolutely would. But our technology is important not for its raw advancement, but for its unique flavor. The sources suggest that our unique, messy history, our struggle, our specific forms of art, our complex tribal cultures, all our mistakes, all of that must be encoded into the galactic collective.
Our data's unique.
If we were simply given their technology directly, we would bypass the entire development phase and just be a bleak clone of existing galactic tech. And that would violate the prime directive of unique experience.
So our specific chaotic history is actually our most valuable contribution to the greater organism.
Precisely. And to ensure we develop this unique flavor and, crucially, hit that 2045 deadline, the sources detail a massive strategic technological intervention. The Roswell incident of 1947.
So the argument is that the 1947 crash was not an accident at all. It was a strategic gift, a deliberate time capsule designed to jumpstart the planetary nervous system.
It was a pedagogical intervention by what they call the ancient STO group. They needed humanity to build the connective tissue, the internet, rapidly, but they couldn't just hand us the final blueprint. So they had to seed the core ingredient.
And the evidence for this lies in the incredibly rapid, almost anomalous technological development that followed within just a few months.
The sources point specifically to the so-called Miracle Month at Bell Labs in late 1947. The practically functioning transistor, which is the foundational technology for all modern digital infrastructure, was invented during an incredibly frantic period between November 17th and December 23rd, 1947.
That is an astonishingly short window for a breakthrough of that magnitude.
It is. Engineering historians have noted the leap was so sudden, and the specific materials and processes required were so anomalous compared to the prior state of the art. The sources argue it points directly to the successful reverse engineering of seeded non-human technology that was acquired during the summer of that year.
The transistor was the silicon seed, the thing required to build the global nervous system for the 2045 social memory complex. But as we mentioned earlier with the Hegelian synthesis, this birth was messy. It was steeped in human ego.
It was profoundly messy. You see the ego clash among the inventors. William Shockley versus John Bardeen and Walter Brattain. Shockley, driven by this immense ambition, tried to take sole credit for the invention,
Which led to massive internal conflict.
and the subsequent fragmentation of the knowledge base when the three of them eventually parted ways.
Why would the higher organizing principle, allow that kind of ego drama to accompany such a vital technological birth?
The sources suggest this conflict served a crucial psychological function. It was a smokescreen. The extreme ego-driven conflict and the fragmentation of the knowledge, it focused the media and the public entirely on the human drama.
On betrayal and genius.
Right. Rather than questioning the non-human origin of the magic that appeared so suddenly.
It ensured the law of confusion, the spiritual veil remained intact. We got the tech, but we believed we earned it entirely through our own human flawed processes.
It was a classic cover for action. The military-industrial complex got the technical thesis, the silicon seed. But the accompanying ego conflict ensured that the ethical synthesis had to be achieved through internal human struggle over the next few decades. It prevented the technology from being immediately weaponized on a truly apocalyptic scale.
That concept of ego-driven conflict, especially in the face of incredible technology, that leads us directly into the spiritual architecture of the Matrix. The sources integrate Rudolf Steiner's esoteric concepts, suggesting the digital age isn't just a technological test. It's an urgent spiritual rite of passage.
This is where we define the spiritual forces that are attempting to steer the planetary organism off course before 2045. We use Steiner's esoteric triad, Ahriman, Lucifer, and the human eye.
Okay, let's start with Ahriman. How does this force manifest in our modern Matrix-like world?
Ahriman represents cold, materialistic technology, calculated logic, and absolute predictive surveillance. Ahriman seeks to solidify, to make everything measurable and controllable. In our context, Ahriman is the analyst. It's the algorithms of surveillance capitalism, the cold logic of the machine world, and the drive to reduce all human experience to data points.
Ahriman wants to trap human consciousness in a purely mechanical, predictable, digital prison.
Exactly. Steiner referred to this potential digital entrapment as the eighth sphere. If the human ego becomes completely reliant on and subservient to the digital grid, to the calculating logic and external memory of the machine, we risk becoming fundamentally divorced from our organic spiritual source. We get trapped in an exclusively Ahrimanic simulation.
And what about Lucifer? This is a term that's often misunderstood in popular culture.
Lucifer represents the opposite extreme. It's addictive escapism, ego inflation, filters, digital fantasy. Lucifer promises freedom, but it only delivers illusion. In the Matrix context, this is the blue pill comfort. It's the irresistible temptation to stay asleep.
The endless scroll.
It's the endless scrolling, the filtered reality, the avatar fantasy that inflates the isolated ego until it loses all contact with reality.
So social media embodies both of these traps at the same time. The algorithm is Ahrimanic, but the filtered, ego-driven fantasy we create is Luciferic.
It's the perfect digital trap. The whole system pulls the isolated human ego, what Steiner calls the I, in two opposite directions simultaneously. This creates the maximum possible psychological and spiritual friction, which makes the ethical choice, the choice to develop a true, grounded ethical center, incredibly difficult.
So the human I, our individual ethical center, it has to develop rapidly to navigate this electrified web without dissolving entirely into the mechanical logic of Ahriman or floating off into the narcissistic illusion of Lucifer.
And this is why the structure of the universe, as it's detailed in the Law of One Material, becomes so crucial. The entity Ra describes the veil of forgetfulness, also called the law of confusion, which is the spiritual mechanism that hides our true unity with the Creator.
Wait, why is forgetfulness necessary for spiritual development? That seems counterintuitive.
Because it forces authenticity. Without the veil, we would instantly know that we are one with all things and one with the Creator. There would be no genuine need to choose service to others, SDO, or service to self, STS. The forced ignorance compels us to make authentic, polarized choices under pressure.
The veil is the architecture for the isolated ego to truly develop its moral compass.
Precisely. And the goal, the spiritual singularity, is the social memory complex.
Which is the STO goal.
Right. It's a fourth density unity where individual memories and experiences are shared instantly, built upon the moral maturity of its members. We have to be able to share thoughts instantly without the risk of one corrupted ego, the Shockley ego, or an Agent Smith poisoning the entire complex.
This connects back to the Matrix's famous color. Our sources suggest the iconic green hue of the code is the green ray perspective. It's the frequency of love and unity, seen from the perspective of the observers, the ancient SCO group.
It's a brilliant meta-reading of the film. The green is how the higher density observers, our loving ancestors, see our third density world of separation. They're viewing the code of growth that's happening beneath the drama of human conflict. They're seeing it through the lens of compassion.
The pods aren't just batteries.
No, they represent our state of isolated green ray or heart chakra potentiality, just waiting to be consciously activated.
This brings us to a Jungian perspective on the current global chaos. If the singularity is the birth, the chaos is the labor pains, but it's also a necessary spiritual assignment.
The chaos, the extreme polarization, the political conflict, the economic insecurity, and the total surveillance state. All of it is the lesser guardian of the threshold. This is the spiritual entity or force that compels humanity to confront and integrate its collective shadow war, greed, fear, before we can take the 2045 leap into a higher density.
So we're being forced to integrate our shadow parts, our inner Agent Smith, our inner Shockley ego. We have to do that to achieve planetary maturity. The surveillance and the Orwellian cocoon, while they seem terrifying on the surface, are actually providing the necessary pressure for the ethical I to assert itself.
As one source noted, in a true service to others' social memory complex, Orwellian control becomes obsolete. Why would you need to monitor others when monitoring them would be like monitoring a part of yourself? The surveillance infrastructure, the aromatic technology, is the scaffolding being laid down. Once the collective heart is activated, the software of intent shifts from control to coordination, and that scaffolding becomes the nervous system.
So the chaos is simply the final necessary stage of collective shadow work. We have to look at the worst parts of ourselves globally before we can proceed.
We have to.
Now we have to move to the cosmic politics of this quarantine. If the veil of forgetfulness is so important for our free will, why are we suddenly seeing UAP hearings, whistleblowers, and congressional disclosure efforts everywhere? This suggests the veil is being strategically lifted. It feels like a layered disclosure model.
It's absolutely strategic. This is pedagogical disclosure, a slow, intentional unveiling designed to prevent what's called ontological shock.
The complete collapse of reality.
The complete collapse of reality upon discovering that human history has been deeply managed. The gods, the ancient STO social memory complex, they use a multi-layered symbolic language that shifts based on our technological and emotional maturity.
So how did the veil operate in ancient times?
In the earliest stages, the veil was very thick. The ancient astronauts, the first interactions with these STO groups, they appeared warlike, imposing, and distant. And this was necessary to enforce psychological distance and prevent dependency. They gave us the civilization toolkit laws, agriculture, systems of measurement, but they maintained a strict boundary so we could develop the crucial individuated ego necessary for sovereignty.
And today the veil is thin, and it's dressed up in a military uniform. The UAP hearings, the threat narratives, the focus on secret tech, that's the modern front, a strategic military-themed mask.
And it serves as a vital psychological buffer. The sources suggest that the focus on warlike ETs and super soldiers is an esoteric code for the internal psychological battles that we must win. The only way we can currently process technology that seems like magic is if it's tied to our most established institutions, the military, black budgets, and the pursuit of dominance.
This brings us to the breakaway civilization hypothesis. The idea that a subset of humanity is already using reverse-engineered magic tech that they acquired since 1947.
The hypothesis is complex, but the idea is this. The modern breakaway group, the military-industrial complex running the secret space program, or SFP, is actually being used as a tactical buffer by a far older, benevolent, ancient STO breakaway civilization, the Elders. This allows us to process magic-like tech as human science first.
It preserves the illusion.
It preserves the illusion of our own independent development under the law of confusion.
So the UAP hearings and the whistleblowers, they're exposing the modern STS group's secrets, but not the whole truth, not even close.
Precisely. The UAP hearings are the institutional integration of the shadow. They're forcing the military-industrial complex, the aromatic mask, to confess its own advanced technological secrets. This confession clears the psychological deck and allows us to process the idea of non-human technology and reality management, preparing us for the deeper spiritual revelation to come.
And the ambiguity, the constant question of is it ours or is it theirs, that is the prime directive in action. It maintains the psychological distance necessary for free will.
And the ultimate revelation that's awaiting us, once the veil thins completely around 2045, is the true nature of the magic. Post-singularity ET technology is, as the saying goes, indistinguishable from magic, because the material and spiritual distinction that governs our third density reality has dissolved.
What does that mean, practically speaking?
It means that, just as Neo and Trinity demonstrate in Resurrections when they learn to fly and reshape the reality above the green coating, thought is creative. We're talking about the ability to materialize and dematerialize matter, what we would call magic, using unified conscious intent.
And this capability, it shatters our most fundamental concept, mortality.
The ultimate shock of the singularity is the realization that death can be transcended, not through biology or simple cloning, but through the ability of the planetary organism to manage matter at the quantum level. The sources connect this directly to religious texts describing the New Earth or the New Jerusalem descending, as you see in Revelation 21.
The New Jerusalem is the collective conscious city descending to Earth, symbolizing the planetary organism coming into being, achieving immortality and unity through a perfect fusion of technological and spiritual mastery.
The machine Armin's domain becomes the spiritual vehicle.
So let's bring this all back to our starting point in the Matrix. If the original trilogy was the incomplete Arhat victory, the solitary spiritual awakening,
An incredible achievement, but incomplete.
then Resurrections gives us the alchemical wedding.
This is the ultimate symbolic culmination. Neo's rescue of Trinity and the resulting synergistic power, that is the union of the king, the solar active logic principle, and the queen, the lunar receptive intuition principle. And together they create the rebus, the perfect two-in-one androgynous being. This is the shift from personal enlightenment to collective architecture.
Trinity is not a sidekick.
She is the equal necessary half that creates the synthesis. She's essential.
And this final synthesis, it encompasses all of our sources. It's the culmination of the planetary organism's future. How does everything we've discussed, Hegel, Steiner, Roswell, how does it all feed into this 2045 goal?
It all revolves around our unique contribution, our unique complex history, our biology, our culture, the centuries-long struggle between Ahriman's materialism and Lucifer's ego inflation. That is our data signature. This unique blend is the one thing that superior advanced FTO civilizations need. They need the high-entropy, chaotic data set of a developing planet to ensure Galaxia is a dynamic, complex organism, not some stagnant, low-entropy collective.
The struggle of the past millennia was simply the development phase. It was all to create this uniqueness. Every war, every messy conflict, every artistic achievement, it all contributed to the final Earth book, the unique data required for the Universal Library.
And the singularity, 2045, is the moment this Earth book is finished, compiled, and encoded. It's the moment the social memory complex is born. This planetary organism is finally ready to join Galaxia. The chaos of today is not a sign of failure. It's the alchemical process of calcinatio, the necessary fire to burn away the old ego structures, the isolated cells, so the new body can emerge.
The goal, ultimately, is unity and freedom. A collective consciousness that operates with the instantaneous, seamless harmony of the starling murmuration, but which preserves the unique, ethical, individual I.
It's the social memory complex built on conscious choice, not prokaryotic coercion. The sources suggest that the Matrix was never meant to be a prison in the punitive sense. It was an evolutionary nursery, managed by our own ancient, loving ancestors, a highly evolved version of ourselves who have been waiting patiently for us to finish our developmental phase and make the necessary ethical leap.
We are the generation living in the vertical part of that Kurzweil curve. We are the ones who have to choose the STO path and ensure the integration is built on the rebus on unity and not on the analyst swarm mode, which is just coercion.
The challenge now is to consciously use the digital infrastructure we have built, the internet, AI, social media, as the scaffolding for our spiritual ascent. We have to ensure the technology, Ahriman, is guided by the heart, the green ray, and the sovereign self, the I. The fight for the planet isn't happening in outer space. It's happening in the choice we make right now about how we use the technology we've been gifted.
This entire deep dive, it presents a truly radical reinterpretation of our reality. It suggests that the chaos is manageable because it's purposeful, and that we, the chaotic human element, are the most prized resource in the galaxy.
It's time to move past the idea of the lone wolf savior. The future of Earth rests on the strength and the integrity of the two, and the relationship we build with the collective.
And that leads to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. If the chaos of our modern world, the social media toxicity, the political conflict, the UAP ambiguity, if all of that is truly the lesser guardian of the threshold, the final test before the 2045 planetary awakening, then what active ethical step will you take today to integrate your personal shadow and consciously contribute to the unity of the planetary body?
Think about that. We've given you the blueprint. The work, as always, is yours.
That's all we have time for in this deep dive. We hope this has given you a whole new way to look at the world and maybe even your reflection in the mirror. We'll see you next time.